The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was a place that many believed untouchable by violence. It was a chamber of polished stone and glowing light, filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. They sat in long rows of curved seats. There, voices once raised for peace, now hushed with tension, for today was no ordinary session. Today, the humans, the newest power to enter the stars, had come to present their vision for unity. Standing tall at the center was Ambassador Daniel Ward, a man known for his calm words and unshakable composure. Daniel was not a soldier, not a warrior, but there was something about him that carried weight. Perhaps it was the way he looked directly into the eyes of those who opposed him. Or perhaps it was his quiet voice, each word carefully chosen like a blade cutting through silence. He spoke of peace, of trade, of building bridges across star systems instead of tearing them down. Many aliens listened with folded arms, skeptical but attentive. For humans had earned a strange reputation in just a short time among the stars. The Krail Dominion watched with cold eyes, their envoy, a tall figure with scaled skin and sharp ridges along his jaw, sneered at every human word. The Krail were proud, warlike, and had crushed many younger races before. To them, humanity was nothing but fragile creatures from a distant blue planet. Untested, unworthy, and now daring to speak in the chamber of the strong when Daniel finished a line about peace being the foundation of power. The Krail envoy laughed loudly, the sound echoing across the hall. "You dare speak of power?" The envoy hissed, his voice rough like broken stone. "Your species crawled into the stars only yesterday. Yet you stand here as if equal to the Dominion. You are prey, nothing more." Murmurs rippled across the chamber. But Daniel did not flinch. He simply raised his chin slightly, his eyes calm. "Humanity has no wish to be your enemy," he said, "but we will not be your prey either." His words hung in the air like steel, and for the first time, the Krail envoy's sneer faltered. Then, without warning, it happened. The Krail moved. Faster than most eyes could follow, a lunge across the polished floor, his clawed hand striking across Daniel's face. The sound cracked like thunder. Daniel stumbled back. The chamber gasped. Some delegates rose in shock. Others looked away in fear, for no one had ever dared strike a diplomat in the council chamber. It was sacred ground. Blood ran down Daniel's cheek, red and bright under the council's white lights. The humans in the chamber surged forward. Security teams rushed, weapons humming in their hands, but Daniel raised one hand to stop them, his face still calm despite the sting. His voice low but steady. "Stand down," he said, and though his lip bled, there was no anger in his tone. "Only control," the Krail envoy smirked, thinking he had humiliated the human in front of the galaxy. But then Daniel did something strange, something that froze the air in the chamber. He smiled. It was not a wide smile, not forced, but a faint curve of his lips. Soft, almost knowing, as if he was the only one aware of a secret. The smile unsettled those who saw it. And for reasons they could not explain, it sent a chill even. Through the Krail envoy's pride, the chamber erupted into chaos, alien voices clashing. Some shouting that the humans should withdraw, others warning that the Krail had broken sacred laws. Guards pulled the envoy back, but he snarled defiantly. Daniel, however, wiped the blood from his chin and slowly straightened his suit, his eyes meeting the envoy's without hatred, only that same, faint, unnerving smile. As medics approached, Daniel whispered to one of his aides, "Send word to the fleet." The aide nodded, eyes wide, because everyone knew what that meant. Humanity had come seeking peace, but Earth had not come unguarded. Orbiting just beyond the reach of the Council's sensors were ships silent, watchful, patient for the galaxy. This was merely an insult, a single blow, but for humanity, it was the spark, Daniel knew what his smile meant. It was not weakness. It was a warning. The kind of smile a man gives before a storm. The kind of smile that death itself might wear when it steps onto the battlefield, the aliens in the chamber whispered among themselves. Remembering the rumors, they had heard stories of human fleets that drilled in secret of ships designed on a death world where survival itself was war, of commanders who trained soldiers not to fear death, but to embrace it. The council had dismissed these as tales meant to frighten children, yet now, watching Daniel stand with blood on his cheek and a smile on his lips, they wondered if the tales were true. The Krail envoy spat on the floor before being dragged away, confident still in his dominion's strength, but as Daniel left the chamber, escorted by his people, there was no mistaking the look in his eyes. He was not broken. He was not defeated. He had simply marked the beginning. For behind his calm voice, behind that quiet smile, Earth's fleets waited in silence, and humanity had just been given its reason. The council chamber would remember this day for centuries. The day the fragile species from a small world was struck in arrogance and smiled back. The day peace was wounded, and something far more dangerous stirred awake. The story of that moment would travel faster than ships, faster than light itself, spreading across worlds, a warning, a promise, a whisper in the dark. When you strike a human, you do not face weakness. You face death, smiling back. Far above, the glittering station of the Galactic Council, where words still echoed from the day's violence, the void of space was silent, but hidden in that silence, humanity's warships waited. They were not visible on any alien sensors, for Earth had designed them to be ghosts among the stars. Cloaked with advanced hull plating and heat-dampening technology, they drifted in formation, watching, patient as predators, at the heart of Gror. At the heart of this silent armada was the Resolute, a dreadnought of black steel, its hull bristling with weapons too terrible for the Council to imagine. Within her command deck stood Admiral Laura Bennett, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice that needed no force to carry weight. She had been a soldier long before she became an admiral, and scars across her hand told of battles fought on Earth's soil. When word came from the council chamber, Ambassador Daniel Ward attacked. Her gaze hardened. "Open a secure channel," she ordered quietly, and the command deck came alive. Screens glowed, officers sat straighter, and the fleet's captains appeared as holograms around her. The silence broke with a hum of voices as one after another confirmed readiness. They struck the ambassador, Laura said, her tone calm but colder than the void around them. The Krail have drawn blood in the council itself. Earth will not remain silent. Her words rolled through the captains like a wave. They were men and women chosen not for their diplomacy, but for their resilience. The kind of humans who had survived death-world storms, deserts, and wars. To them, peace was a luxury, not a weakness. They nodded, voices firm. "Orders, Admiral." For a long moment, Laura looked at the star map projected before her. Red markers showed Krail fleets scattered across nearby systems, arrogant and unprepared. They had believed Earth came alone, vulnerable. They had believed humanity would beg for mercy. Laura knew better. "Bring all ships to alert," she said. "Arm weapons, but hold fire until my word. The galaxy must see that it is not humanity who begins war, but if war is given, we will end it." Her officers moved instantly. Across the fleet, alarms pulsed low and steady, crews rushing to their stations. Missile bays unlocked, railgun charges began to hum with lethal energy, and squadrons of interceptors floated out like swarms of silent insects, waiting for command. Yet the void remained quiet. No alien eye could see them. On board the Resolute, Commander Nathan Cole approached Laura. He had fought beside her years ago in a ground war on Mars. And though he respected her steel, he also knew the cost of anger. "Admiral," he said, lowering his voice, "if we move too soon, the Council will claim we are aggressors. Are you sure this is the time?" Laura turned to him, her gaze unwavering. "Nathan, the time was chosen the moment their envoy raised his hand against Daniel. The galaxy must understand something today. We came with open hands, but those hands are not empty. The Krail think we are fragile. Let them learn what fragility truly means." Far below, on the Council station, rumors already spread like fire. Delegates whispered that human fleets were near, though none could prove it. Some scoffed, dismissing humanity as bold talkers. Others felt an unease they could not explain, remembering the look on Daniel's face when blood ran down his cheek. "How?" He smiled. Meanwhile, Daniel lay in a medical bay, refusing to rest. His cheek was patched, his lips swollen, but his mind was sharp. He spoke softly to his aide, a young woman named Maria Allen, who had been by his side since Earth's first days in the Council. "Send the phrase," he said simply. Maria hesitated. "The Admiral will know what it means." "She will," Daniel replied, his faint smile returning. "It is time." And so, in the shadows of orbit, a coded signal reached the Resolute. 3 words only, but they carried the weight of history. Prepared the silence. Admiral Bennett read them, and her jaw tightened. She gave no loud command, no dramatic gesture, only a steady nod. Across the fleet, weapons hummed a little louder. Shields pulsed brighter. And stealth cruisers edged closer to the Krail strongholds that glittered like careless jewels in nearby space. For the galaxy, nothing had changed. The stars twinkled as always. But for humanity, the line had been crossed. They would not fire first, but they were ready. The humans understood patience. They understood how predators stalked in the dark, waiting for the enemy to reveal weakness. And above all, they understood that the world was watching, on the bridge. Admiral Bennett finally spoke again, her voice low, almost a whisper, but her crew leaned forward as if it were thunder. "Let the Dominion laugh tonight," she said. "For tomorrow, their stars will burn." Every officer present felt the chill of her words. And in that moment, the silent fleet of Earth became something more than ships. They became judgment, waiting for the call, what the Krail had struck in arrogance. What they had thought a fragile diplomat was not a weak species begging for peace. It was the spark to wake a sleeping giant, and above their worlds, death was smiling back. While the Council chambers echoed with confusion and anger, shadows were already moving beyond their walls. The aliens argued about laws and treaties, but humanity had never trusted words alone. Earth had built more than warships, they had built networks, hidden eyes and ears scattered across the stars, and those networks had already begun to whisper. In the quiet corridors of the station, cloaked figures walked unnoticed. They were human operatives, dressed in dark armor designed to bend light and sound. To most aliens, they looked like shadows slipping along the edges of sight. These were not soldiers who marched openly. They were hunters, trained to move silently through enemy territory. Their purpose was not to start a war, but to make sure humanity would never again be struck blind. Ambassador Daniel Ward's smile, the one he gave after the Krail's attack, was not just for the envoy. It was also for his own people, a signal in plain sight. Every agent watching the broadcast knew what it meant. Move. On the alien side, the Krail Dominion was already celebrating. Their envoy's strike had been transmitted back to their homeworld, and the footage was broadcast across their systems as a symbol of dominance. To the Krail, it was proof that the humans were nothing more than soft diplomats, unable to answer insult with strength. In their halls, warriors feasted, laughing at the humans' supposed weakness. They did not see the silent data streams feeding from their own terminals, copied and rerouted by unseen hands, from a hidden chamber aboard the Resolute. An intelligence officer named Claire Mason watched those streams carefully, Her fingers danced over the console, pulling up maps of the Krail fleets, troop deployments, and hidden supply depots. None of this information was given freely. It had been stolen piece by piece, gathered by humans who wore no uniforms but carried the same fire as any soldier. Claire whispered to herself, "They think they humiliated us. They don't know. They've already lost." Meanwhile, back on the council station, rumors spread quickly among the other species. Delegates spoke in hushed voices, nervous about the strange calmness of the human ambassador. "Why did he smile?" one asked, their voice shaking. "Does he not understand the danger?" Another shook their head. "No, he understands too well." That was not the smile of weakness. That was the smile of someone waiting for something we cannot see. The Krail ignored these whispers, too drunk on their own pride to care. But far away, in hidden outposts, their commanders began to vanish. One was found in his quarters, his body slumped with no sign of struggle. Another's ship exploded before it even left the dock, crossed 3 different star systems. Leaders of the Dominion died in silence, with no alarms raised. Their soldiers whispered of curses, of invisible hunters. But the truth was colder. Humanity's hand was already reaching into their heart. Daniel lay in the medical bay, his cheek still bandaged, yet he refused to rest. His aide, Maria, tried to urge him, "Sir, you need time to heal." But Daniel shook his head. "The wound is not mine alone," he said softly. "It belongs to all of us, and they must see that humanity bleeds but does not break." His calm voice carried weight, and Maria realized that the bandage on his cheek would not weaken his presence. It would strengthen it, would be a reminder in the Council's grand halls. Alien leaders were beginning to realize the danger. Some races, long wary of the Krail, watched with unease. If the humans truly unleashed their fury, the balance of power across the galaxy could shatter overnight. One elder delegate leaned toward another and whispered, "We may have witnessed more than an insult. We may have witnessed the spark of a war none of us can control, but none of them saw." What Daniel already knew. Humanity's fleets were silent, their weapons ready, but it was not ships alone that would break the Dominion. It was fear. Fear that was already spreading, whispered in dark corners, carried on the sight of a human diplomat's bloodied face. And his smile deep within the shadows of the station. A pair of human operatives stood on a balcony, watching the Krail envoy's quarters. The taller one, his voice steady, said, "He believes he shamed us." The other, a woman with sharp eyes, replied, "He gave us the excuse we were waiting for." Minutes later, the envoy's communication feed went dark. His guards found only silence where he had been. No weapon, no trace, just absence. And with that disappearance, the Dominion's laughter began to falter. The galaxy did not yet know it, but the war had already begun. Not with fleets colliding in fire, not with planets burning, but with whispers, shadows, and the chilling truth that Earth's response was not coming yet, was already here, and everywhere the Krail turned. They would remember the human smile. For it was not the smile of a diplomat. It was the smile of death itself, waiting patiently in the shadows. The Krail Dominion believed themselves untouchable. For generations, they had crushed weaker races, forced them into submission, and bent their leaders under the weight of chains. When their envoy struck Ambassador Daniel Ward, the Dominion's commanders cheered across the stars. To them, it was proof that humanity was fragile, unworthy of the Council's protection. They raised their banners high. Soldiers laughed in mess halls, and fleets prepared for war. But pride is a dangerous shield. It blinds the eye, dulls the ear. It makes the heart too heavy to sense the danger waiting in silence. The first retaliation did not come with a declaration of war. It came with silence far from the Council station. Hidden within the shadow of an asteroid field, 3 human stealth cruisers awakened. Their black hulls drank the starlight, their engines humming. Lo, inside one of them, Commander Elijah Brooks stood at the command chair, his eyes steady on the glowing tactical display. Before him, a Krail command station floated lazily above a red gas giant, its lights bright, its defenses minimal. The Krail did not believe an enemy could reach them here. They were wrong. Eliminate their communications, Brooks ordered. Softly with a single signal, the cruiser released a pulse of energy that silenced the station's signals. No distress call, no warning. The Krail inside continued their laughter, unaware the void outside had already turned against them. Then the second order came. Fire. The first railgun round tore through the station's hull like a knife through cloth. Explosions followed, air vented into the void, and entire decks crumbled under invisible fire. By the time the alarms began to scream, it was already too late. The laughter ended in silence, just as the humans intended. Across the galaxy, the same story repeated. In the Vela system, a Dominion supply base lit up with flames as human missiles cut through its fuel lines. In the dark orbit of Yavros, a Krail flagship exploded without warning, split in half by weapons they had never seen. And in the cold belt of Haran, Dominion officers vanished into the void as their station was swallowed by fire. The strikes were precise, chosen not at random. But with careful calculation, the humans did not target civilians or colonies. They struck where the Dominion believed itself strongest, its command centers, its pride, its symbols of power. Admiral Laura Bennett, aboard the dreadnought Resolute, received the reports one by one. Her officers looked to her for reaction, but she gave no smile, no celebration. Her voice remained steady. Do not broadcast. Do not claim victory. Let them feel the silence. And so silence became humanity's weapon. No speeches were made. No threats shouted into the stars. Instead, wreckage drifted quietly in the void, the Dominion's banners reduced to ash. Survivors who crawled from burning stations told stories of invisible hunters, of ships that appeared and vanished like shadows. The word spread quickly through soldiers' camps. The humans do not forgive. On the council station, chaos erupted. Delegates received news of the strikes and demanded answers. Some accused Earth of reckless violence. Others trembled in fear that the war would consume them all. Ambassador Daniel Ward, his cheek still bandaged, walked into the chamber without hesitation. His steps were calm, but every eye followed him. Waiting for the humans' words, he stood before them, his voice steady though still hoarse from the injury. We did not start this, he said, but humanity will not bow. If you think us fragile, if you think us prey, remember this: we have always survived by answering cruelty with strength. The council fell silent. For in his voice they heard not the softness of a diplomat, but the weight of a soldier. And in his faint smile, they saw the shadow of fleets waiting in silence. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Krail Dominion, panic began to bloom. Commanders shouted in confusion as reports arrived too late. Ships vanished from their scanners. Outposts they had controlled for decades were now nothing but drifting debris. Pride turned to doubt. Doubt turned to fear. In one dark chamber, a Krail general slammed his clawed fist on the table. How can they strike so fast? Where are they hiding? But no one answered. The humans had shown their hand, and their hand was death itself. The retaliation was not an end. It was only the beginning. Humanity had moved from silence to shadow, and soon the shadows would grow into fire. The galaxy now understood a terrible truth. When the Dominion struck a single man in arrogance, they had not humiliated humanity. They had awakened it. And now, death was no longer smiling from afar. It was already at their door. The council chamber had never felt so fragile. Once it had been a place of order and balance, where words shaped peace and treaties carried the weight of stars. Now it felt like glass, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. Delegates shouted across the hall, voices filled with fear and accusation. The attack on Ambassador Daniel Ward had been shocking enough, but the sudden destruction of Krail outposts had thrown the chamber into chaos. No one could deny what had happened, and yet no one dared to speak the truth aloud. The Krail Dominion seats were empty, their envoy gone. Some whispered he had fled, others whispered darker things, that he had simply disappeared into silence, like so many of his commanders across the stars. The Krail called it sabotage, treachery, and trickery. But no matter how they shouted, the evidence was undeniable. Something was hunting them. Something invisible, and everyone knew who it was. The delegates of smaller species huddled together, whispering nervously. They had seen empires rise and fall before, but never so quickly, never so quietly. One spoke softly, his scaled hands trembling. "The humans have woken. Do you not feel it? This is not the strike of a wounded race. This is the step of a predator." His words spread, carried in whispers, repeated again and again until it seemed the whole chamber echoed with them. The council's speaker, a tall alien with pale skin and a voice that normally commanded respect, tried to restore order. "Enough. We are here for peace. We must demand answers." But his voice was drowned out by panic. Some called for Earth to be expelled from the council. Others demanded an investigation. And yet, none dared to confront the humans directly. For deep down, in the silence between the shouting, all of them remembered the smile. The smile Daniel had given when struck. At that very moment, the chamber doors opened. The sound echoed across the hall, sharp as a blade cutting through noise. All voices fell silent. Ambassador Daniel Ward walked inside, his pace steady, his bandages visible under the bright light. His aide, Maria Allen, followed close behind, carrying a stack of reports. Daniel carried no weapon, wore no armor, yet every step felt heavier than iron. He stood at the podium, lifting his gaze to meet the eyes of every delegate. No one dared to speak first. "I stand before you," Daniel began, his voice low but firm, not as a soldier, but as a man who came here for peace. He touched the bandage on his cheek briefly, not in weakness, but as a reminder. "This wound is not mine alone. It was given in the heart of the council, the place meant to be sacred. A strike against me was a strike against the very laws that hold this chamber together." Some delegates lowered their eyes in shame. Others looked at him with fear. But Daniel did not stop. His voice grew sharper, his words cutting through silence. Like fire through dry wood, humanity came here offering open hands. We asked for peace. We offered trust. But the Dominion saw our hand and thought it weak. They thought us prey. They thought a blow would break us. He paused. His faint smile returned. They were wrong. Gasps rippled across the hall. That smilet was the same one that haunted the galaxy now. Not cruel, not mocking, but calm, steady, terrifying. The smile of someone who had seen storms and walked through them without flinching. "The retaliation you whisper of," Daniel continued, "was not born of hatred. It was born of survival. Humanity has always lived with the truth that peace must be defended. And if peace is broken, then we will not bow. We will not surrender. We will not forget." The words hung in the air like the toll of a great bell. Admiral Laura Bennett appeared beside him then, her uniform sharp, her presence a shadow of power. She had not been invited, yet no one dared stop her. She did not speak, but the sight of her was enough. Every delegate knew who she was. They had heard her name whispered in fear. Admiral of the fleet. Commander of the shadows. Daniel looked over the hall one final time. Let the galaxy understand this. Earth does not seek war. But Earth will not be humiliated, will not be struck, and will not be prey. We came here for peace. You drew blood instead. And now you see what follows. The chamber was silent. No delegate dared to shout. No voice dared to argue. The truth was clear to all. Humanity had revealed only a glimpse of its strength, and even that glimpse had broken the Dominion's pride. The Council realized that day that Earth's power was not measured in fleets alone, but in will. A will that could not be bent. Outside the chamber, news of Daniel's words spread across every star system. The smaller races listened with hope. The great powers listened with fear. And the Krail Dominion, once arrogant, now trembled in silence, for they had struck a man and found not weakness, but the warning of death smiling back. The war did not arrive with fanfare. It came like a storm, sudden and unstoppable. The Krail Dominion, furious at the silent strikes that had burned their command centers, finally declared humanity an enemy of the stars. They gathered fleets across their borders, thousands of ships bristling with weapons. Their banners stretched wide across the void. The Krail believed numbers alone would crush the humans. They believed sheer size would drown Earth's defiance. They had no idea what waited for them at Myro's Belt. The Myro's Belt was a wasteland of shattered rock and drifting ice. For centuries, it had been nothing but a forgotten graveyard of broken asteroids. But humanity had chosen it as their battlefield. Among the fractured stones and shadows, Terran warships waited. Not hundreds, not thousands, just 50. 50. Ships against the Krail's 200. The numbers seemed hopeless, and yet the humans did not flinch. Aboard the resolute Squay, Admiral Laura Bennett stood at the command table, her eyes locked on the holographic map. Red lights marked the enemy fleets pushing closer. Blue lights showed her own forces hidden in the belt. To her officers, the situation was impossible. To Laura, it was perfect. They believe numbers will save them, she said calmly. But numbers mean nothing in the dark. Her crew nodded. Every human on that ship understood. Earth had never won by numbers. They had survived deserts, oceans, storms, and predators that should have wiped them out. Survival had taught them something far more valuable than arrogance. Precision. As the Krail fleet pushed into the belt, their ships spread wide, engines glowing, weapons charging. Their commanders laughed, already imagining how quickly the humans would beg for mercy. But then the first shadow struck. A railgun round shot from the void, faster than their sensors could track. It tore through the lead cruiser, splitting it in half before its shields even registered the impact. Flames erupted, bodies and metal cast into space. Before the Krail could react, the shadows moved again. Human stealth frigates emerged from behind asteroids, releasing swarms of missiles that darted like arrows into exposed flanks. Explosions flared across the fleet. On board the Krail flagship, alarms screamed. Where are they? Where are the humans? The commander roared, claws slamming into the console. His officers scrambled, trying to pinpoint the attackers. But every time their sensors locked onto one ship, it vanished back into the shadows of rock and ice. From the Resolute, Admiral Bennett gave no triumphant cry, no loud order. Her commands were calm, precise, each word delivered like a knife. Target their carriers. Silence their cum relays. Cut their wings. And the humans obeyed. Interceptor squadrons darted out, sleek and sharp, weaving between asteroid shadows. They tore into the Krail fighter waves, their guns blazing with deadly accuracy. One by one, Dominion carriers went dark, their hangars shredded before they could launch reinforcements. In the chaos, the Resolute moved. Engines roared, its massive frame cutting through the belt. Its railguns thundered, one round after another, splitting Krail warships like glass under a hammer. The dreadnought's presence was like a leviathan stirring in the dark. Each strike a reminder that humanity was not prey, but predator. Commander Nathan Cole stood at Bennett's side, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. We're outnumbered 4-1, and yet, He looked at the tactical map as red markers blinked out one by one. They're falling apart. They don't know how to fight us, Laura replied. They've only fought weaker prey. We were. Born on a death world. Every storm, every predator, every war taught us this: fear sharpens the blade, not dulls it. Across the belt, the battle raged. The Krail tried to regroup, to form lines, but every attempt was shattered by human precision. Every time they thought they had trapped the Terrans, they found themselves ambushed instead. What should have been overwhelming force turned into chaos. And in that chaos, the humans thrived. Hours later, silence fell again. Wreckage drifted through the belt, glowing with dying fire. Out of 200 Krail ships, only a fraction limped away. Humanity had lost ships' 2 brave crews, who fought to the end, but the impossible had been done. 50 Terran warships had broken the Dominion's fleet. News spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Worlds that had feared the Dominion now whispered of humanity with awe. Smaller races repeated the stories, their voices trembling. With something new: hope. For if Earth could stand against such numbers, perhaps no empire was truly invincible. On the council station, delegates listened in stunned silence as reports poured in. Some were horrified, some were amazed, and some were terrified. For they realized the truth: the humans had not even revealed their full strength. What had happened at Myro's belt was only a taste, and aboard the Resolute, Admiral Bennett stood quietly, looking out at the drifting wreckage. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She only whispered to herself, "This is what happens when you mistake silence for weakness." The galaxy would remember the Battle of Myro's Belt, not just for the fire, not just for the loss, but for the message it carried. Humanity did not need numbers. Humanity needed only resolve. And that resolve, once unleashed, could break empires. The Dominion had thought they struck fear into the humans by attacking a single diplomat. Instead, they had opened the gates of war. And now, across the stars, death was no longer waiting in silence. Death was moving, and it wore the face of humanity. The war dragged on, and with every passing day, the galaxy began to understand a truth it had tried to deny. Humanity was not fragile. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was something far more dangerous something. The Krail Dominion had never faced before. On distant worlds, the Dominion spread fear through broadcasts, warning that the humans were demons, beasts from a cursed world. They showed images of Terran warships burning across the stars, claiming victory after victory. But the truth could not be hidden forever. Survivors from the Battle of Myro's Belt told a different story. They spoke in trembling voices of ships that moved like shadows, of guns that tore through fleets without mercy, of humans who fought without hesitation. And they all remembered one detail above all others: the smile. The Krail soldiers whispered it to one another in the dark, as if speaking it aloud too loudly would summon their nightmares. They remembered how the human ambassador, struck and bleeding, had smiled. 'Twas not the smile of a man in pain, nor the smile of arrogance. It was the calm smile of someone who knew death was already walking beside him. The council began to learn the truth of that smile as well. Reports spread that Daniel Ward, the ambassador they thought was only a diplomat, was more than he appeared. Rumors surfaced of his past on Earth, his years as a soldier in hidden wars, battles fought on Earth's soil long before humanity reached the stars. They whispered of scars across his back, of missions carried out in silence, of comrades who called him the man who never breaks. Yet Daniel never spoke of it. When asked, he dismissed it with quiet eyes and steady words. "I serve in peace now," he would say. But the faint smile that followed told a different story. Back on the council station, as the galaxy debated and argued, Daniel returned to the chamber once more. His bandages were gone, but the scar on his cheek was still fresh, red against his skin. He stood at the podium, his gaze sweeping across the delegates. Some flinched when he looked at them. Some lowered their eyes. The crowd's empty seat sat like a wound in the chamber. Daniel's voice was steady. "The Dominion believed a blow would shame us, but shame is not in our nature. When a predator strikes at humanity, it finds something it does not expect." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "It finds that death smiles back." The hall fell into silence. The words were not shouted, not roared. They were spoken like a simple fact. And in that simplicity, they carried a weight heavier than any threat. Outside the chamber, the war continued. Human fleets struck not with noise, but with precision. Entire Dominion strongholds went dark overnight. Carriers disappeared in the void, never to be seen again. And wherever the Terran ships appeared, the survivors carried the same tale, the calmness of their enemy, the silence of their attacks, and the chilling reminder of the ambassador's smile. Among the Krail themselves, fear spread deeper than their leaders would admit. Soldiers refused to sleep without guards at their side. Commanders barked louder, trying to hide their own dread. And when Daniel appeared on broadcasts, his scar visible, his eyes steady, many Krail turned away, unable to face the calm stare of the man they could not break. One Krail captain, speaking to his troops before a battle, tried to rally them. "They bleed like us. They can die like us." But even as he spoke, one soldier muttered softly, "Then why does he smile?" The words spread through the ranks like poison, gnawing at their courage. Back aboard the Resolute, Admiral Laura Bennett stood with Daniel, the two of them watching the galaxy shift under their actions. She studied him carefully. "You never told them who you were," she said. Daniel gave a faint shrug. "What I was doesn't matter. What matters is what they see now." "And what do they see?" she asked. His smile returned, small, steady, haunting. "They see what they fear most. A man who has already made peace with death." Laura said nothing more. She understood. On Earth, they had always lived under storms, volcanoes, quakes, and wars. To live on a death world was to learn one lesson. Above all, death was never far away. Some ran from it. Some hid. But some, like Daniel, learned to walk with a tan smile as the Dominion's fleets burned. As their generals vanished, as their soldiers trembled, the galaxy came to a realization. The Krail had not simply struck a diplomat. They had struck a man forged by Earth itself, a man who carried death in his shadow and smiled because he knew the outcome before the first blow was thrown. And now, everywhere his face appeared, the smile haunted them. To the weak, it brought hope. To the arrogant, it brought fear. To the Krail, it brought nightmares. For that smile carried a promise. Humanity would endure. Humanity would fight. And when the enemy looked into the humans' eyes, they would not see weakness. They would see death, smiling back. The war ended not with a final explosion, but with silence. The once mighty Krail Dominion, which had boasted of crushing humanity, now lay in ruins. Their fleets, once proud banners across the stars, were broken and scattered. Their generals, once arrogant and loud, were silent, many killed, others hiding, a few begging for terms. And their worlds, once shining with power, now trembled under the shadow of a truth they could not erase. They had struck a human, and in return, death. had come smiling. The Galactic Council called for peace talks, desperate to stop the fire from spreading further. The chamber, once chaotic and filled with shouting, was now quiet as stone. The smaller races leaned forward in nervous hope, the larger ones in heavy fear. The Krau seats were nearly empty, their few surviving representatives too shaken to meet any eyes. Everyone waited for the humans. When the chamber doors opened, the sound echoed like thunder. Ambassador Daniel Ward entered first, his scar healed but still visible, a mark that seemed more like a crown than a wound. Behind him walked Admiral Laura Bennett, her uniform sharp, her presence heavy with authority. Together, they stepped into the center of the hall. Two figures, one who spoke for peace, one who commanded war, but both carried the weight of humanity's will. Daniel's gaze swept across the chamber. He saw the fear in alien eyes, the doubt, the whispers. He also saw hope from the smaller races who had always feared empires like the Dominion. To them, humanity's survival meant maybe, just maybe, the strong could be challenged. When Daniel spoke, his voice carried with calm strength. This war was not of our making. Earth did not come to the stars seeking conquest. We came seeking peace. His words were measured, deliberate. He paused, letting silence hang heavy before continuing. But when peace is broken, when blood is drawn, humanity will not bow. We will not yield. We will not forget. The delegates leaned in. His voice was not loud, but it struck harder than thunder. Let it be known across every star system, Daniel continued, that humanity does not seek war. But if war is forced upon us, then those who bring it will find no mercy. They will find the shadow of fleets, the fire of worlds, and the resolve of a people who have walked with death since the day we were born. His words rolled across the chamber like a wave. Some lowered their heads in fear, some nodded in respect. And some whispered among themselves that this man, this human, spoke not like a politician, but like history itself, given voice. Admiral Bennett then stepped forward. She did not give long speeches. She simply spoke one line, her eyes locked on the council. We do not threaten. We do not boast. We act. The weight of those words struck harder than any weapon. The delegates remembered the fleets destroyed. At Myro's belt, the silent strikes across the Dominion. The countless battles where humans had turned the impossible into victory. They remembered the silence, the precision, the smile. The Krail envoy who remained rose weakly, his scales dull, his voice trembling. Then you will crush us all, until nothing remains. Daniel turned his eyes toward him, his face calm, his voice soft but steady. No, humanity is not here to destroy. We are here to survive. But if survival means you fear to strike us again, then let that fear be your teacher. The chamber fell into silence again. No one argued. No one shouted. For they all understood the humans had spoken not in anger, but in truth. It was not a promise of endless war, it was a warning. A warning etched in fire, written in blood, and sealed with a smile that none could forget. Outside the chamber, across the galaxy, those words spread. On small worlds once ruled by fear, people whispered the phrase as a shield, strike a human, and death smiles back. On great empires that once saw themselves as untouchable, leaders sat in silence, rethinking every plan, every conquest, every war. And on Earth itself, people lifted their eyes to the stars with pride. Their ambassador had been struck. Their fleets had fought. Their dead had been honored, and in the end, the galaxy would never see them as fragile again. As Daniel left the chamber beside Admiral Bennett, Maria Allen, his aide, walked at his side. She whispered quietly, "Do you think they understand now?" Daniel's faint smile returned, the same one that had haunted the Dominion since the first strike. "They understand enough," he said. "They will remember." And if they forget, the stars will remind them. For the war was over, but the message would endure. Humanity did not come to conquer. Humanity did not come to kneel. Humanity came with open hands, but behind those hands was a will forged on. A death world, a will that would never break. And so the galaxy learned its warning. Strike a human in arrogance, and you will see death smiling back.